Very good evening, Anand. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this show of Leaders Speak. And I'm really excited to have you here and look forward to hearing your wisdom from the IT front and sharing some insights that will be useful for all the viewers. So here we go. What I wanted to ask you is, it's the tech era that we are in, and IT costs can be very significant for any business. So how can a business be smart and recover these costs as business gains?
Right. Thanks, Sangeeta. See, when we talk of, I think the world is moving and businesses are moving into a situation where IT is no longer seen only as a cost center. So earlier, businesses used to look at IT as only a cost center. Having said that, I think in today's world, what's happened is a couple of things, right? One is consumerization of IT has allowed you to pick and choose technologies which are at, at different levels of adoption that you want to pick. That is one. Second thing is with cloud coming in and software as a service, infrastructure as a service, this allows you a fair amount of flexibility depending on where you want to set your organization's IT infrastructure. But end of the day, it doesn't make sense to look at IT purely from a cost perspective. You will need to look at what is the value that investment is delivering. So you may actually need to perhaps in some cases increase your spending depending on what's the value you're getting out of it.
Correct. Right. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. So apart from the one-time costs, many IT costs are also like recurring in nature. Year on year, you need to keep spending on them. So how are these recurring costs actually? How can they contribute to a business growth, or does it really? How does one factor this in?
See, if you look at IT cost per se, right, I think there are a couple of things to note. First of all, how do you measure that? What is the right cost and what cost is acceptable, right? So it's always useful, first of all, to benchmark yourself in the industry. Now, if you take the FMCG industry, for example, anywhere between a 0.8 to 1.2% of your net revenue is considered to be within the range of spend. If you go to a let's say a more heavy industry, that percentage could be different. It could be lesser. It could be 0.5%. And certain industry like let's say telecom and areas like telecom, it could be close to 3% or 4%. And again, I'm talking of the India context, right? That's the first point. The second thing is to also look at IT cost as not as a straight line when you look at it year on year. It's something, it follows more like a sine curve, because you'll have years of investment where your costs will be higher, and then there'll be years of recovery both in terms of the organization change and also in terms of the recovering the value from the investment, and so there'll be a lowering of the cost. Now, your question on how do you recover cost? I think both. I mean, if you see today, IT is often called as a business within a business. There are elements of running a business within technology, IT itself. So most IT organizations will have some kind of a productivity agenda that is running every year in terms of reducing cost. There are economies that come from your network, economies that come from your processing power, right? And economies that come from your storage. So as technology is improving, your costs are also shrinking. Now, question is, how do you leverage that to lower your costs? So usually there are programs to run to bring down costs, and that cost is plowed back into investment. So you are therefore funding your IT investments through your savings. So these are typically strategies that one adopt in managing recurring cost. The other important thing to keep in mind is that you would never embark on an IT program without having a very clear idea of what is the value you are seeking, right? So if there is recurring costs, there is also a recurring value that is coming out of it. So that's got to be commensurate with it. So these are some of the elements to think about when you're looking at IT costs. costs.
Got it, got it. That leads me to another question to say, with the changing technology and, the rate of change is so fast and so quick in the IT industry. So
Right.
how can, businesses manage with that and in the
Right.
context of the recurring costs?
Right. So, like I mentioned cloud in the beginning, right? Today, I mean, there are two important things to keep in mind. One is to ensure that your technology program or your digital program is embedded into your business strategy, first of all, so that it is not seen simply as infrastructure, but as a business enabler. And that's really the most important point. So once you look at it that way, then your cost dynamics also will be viewed differently. So the most important thing is that. And once you look at it that way, there are a whole host of options today, depending on the size of the company and the depth of your digital transformation, to choose different levels of technology interventions. And there are always trade-offs, right? I mean, I mentioned cloud, that's one example. But there are today multi-layered offerings. There are vendors who are coming up with a lot of options when it comes to network, in infrastructure, compute, cloud services, software as a service. So you can choose a path which helps you scale your costs along with the benefits. So now there's also a problem of legacy costs. So if you're an organization which is stuck with a lot of legacy costs, that's also something you need to keep in mind. Uh, but it's not an easy game. You will need to sometimes bite the bullet and take those, run those transformations so that you're setting up for the future, right? Because one thing that keeps piling up in technology is what we call as technology debt, where you're layered with or saddled with old technologies and you're not keeping abreast with new technologies, and that risks the corporation in terms of continuity and security and other value streams.
Sure. So now with most businesses, are happening online. So what are some of the best practices for a business to have an edge, especially in online selling with the help of technology IT?
So yeah, again, Sangeeta, you'll have to look at it from your business strategy. Does your product fit into an online kind of is online channel suited for your product and your service line? That's the first question. And if so, who are your consumers and who are your customers? Do they want to buy your products and your services online? And if they do so, how do they engage? So the first and foremost thing is to really understand your consumers and how they interact and engage with you. Basis that, let's say there is an opportunity to engage online. Now you can again look at it as simply engaging consumers online, or it could also be commerce, which is actually transacting online, right? So these are some of the first and primary considerations, which are the bigger part of it, right? Once you do that, let's say you need to, it's relatively easy to set up, let's say, an e-commerce site. Relatively easy to set up a shopping site with a cart and payment gateway. Today, there are a whole host of online tools that allow you to sort of ramp up pretty fast. In fact, not only for businesses, even today it is so democratized that even individuals can quickly set up their own selling gateway and get started pretty quickly at a low cost and at a variable cost. Yeah, I think the thing with costs in these things is that costs have become highly variabilized, and that's a great value for startups and small companies, because they can keep the cost commensurate with the value that they are seeing. Yeah. So that's the way I would encourage people to look at things like online. Definitely, people are getting online, especially with COVID. It's got accelerated even further. The change was happening. COVID simply accelerated it. The question is, rather than jumping into the bandwagon of getting online, I think you need to be firmly grounded in your fundamentals of understanding your customers, and then you can pick up your strategies on how to engage digital.
Sure. Right. Okay. So, there is a virus, then we had ransomware, then cybersecurity, dark web. I mean, so many other things. So, how can a business actually build robust IT systems and protect the business?
Yeah. So look, I think these risks are here, and they will remain, and they will continue to grow, and corporations need to manage them. I don't think you can completely avoid them. I think every corporation will have to face these attacks, and learn to manage them. It's very much like any other business risk. This is a new risk. Cybersecurity is a new risk that businesses face. I think the what is while there are a whole host of technology options available to protect. In fact, upgrading your technology stack regularly is one of the things that is recommended. And there are a whole host of cybersecurity tools that are available. But what is often misunderstood or not fully grasped is the fact that uh, close to close to 50% of the challenges on cybersecurity come from the human angle. It comes from employees not understanding these risks, uh, and falling prey to fairly straightforward low tech attacks. Most of your challenges are in that area. So any security program will need to have at least a 50% outlay in employee awareness, and organizations need to get their employees more aware of these risks.
So, employee awareness, would that make it like foolproof, or is there a way to make it foolproof?
Yeah, like I said, I unfortunately I don't think there is a way to make it foolproof. It's like the locks on your door. I don't think it can ever give you 100% security at home, but it just reduces the chance of a threat or an attack. So employee awareness is an important one. Uh, Along with tech tools and anti-malware, antiviruses, and other protections, security operational command centers, which monitor your attacks. But there's no sure way of protecting yourself, unfortunately. So the first and foremost defense is really awareness. You
Right.
need to be more aware of the risks.
Sure. Thanks. Right. So, what advice would you give a business from the data security perspective? And related to that is how can a business prevent data leakages?
As you know, it's a cliche that data is the new oil, right? I think there is, if you look at uh, if you look at organizations, IT applications sometimes outlive organizations, right? And data outlives everything. Data outlives your organization and your application. So your whatever data is created can stay for even beyond the life of the organization. So and data is also getting created at a rapid pace. So in terms of security, look, the first and foremost thing is you have to have an organizational plan of classifying your data. There's data that is confidential to the organization, which, for example, let's say your product formula or your manufacturing cost structure is probably very confidential in nature, and that's kind of data is confidential data. Then there is data that is restricted use, and now you can have any terminology, but broadly it is these kind of categories. The second would be something like restricted use, where probably data like your P&L, your sales for the month or daily sales. These are restricted use. You wouldn't like it to be easily available outside your organization. And the third is public use data. Things like information in your product, your brands, and so it's important for organizations to first create a framework where they look at what kind of data. so that your data security program can address data in the appropriate buckets. It's not like a one size fits all. So that's your first step. And then the second step is, once having defined your data, uh, you will need to ensure that the systems that create and use these data are protected. There are proper access control systems in place. The threat of data leakage, etc., is avoided. And lastly, again, I come back to my other point, which I just mentioned, is about, again, awareness, right? I think it seems very simple, but there are a lot of statistics out there, a lot of studies done out there that shows that most of the attacks, most of the data leakages happen because of uninformed employees and people who are unaware of their actions. So that's on the data security. You mentioned data leakage again, and data leakage is can happen in multiple ways. And again, the most common way is not through the tech route. Data leakage. Data leakage happens most of the times because of lack of awareness and understanding, and having a clear policy of how to deal with data. A loosely shared email, uh, information shared on public platforms by employees who are not aware of uh, what they're doing sometimes, is often the cause of a lot of data leakage. So having, again, a clear policy, a framework for defining employees on what's the right thing to do around data is extremely critical. And then, having said that, again, there are a lot of tools that to prevent data leakage. There are encryption tools which are fairly easy to use, online tools where you can encrypt your documents and can't be read by people who don't want to read it. So there are enough tech tools out there that sort of protect your data.
Sure. The data policy sounds pretty interesting. So, any pointers on what are the key elements that a good data policy should have that organizations can follow?
Yeah. Yeah. So Sangeeta, as I said, I think you always a policy must always start with classification of data. I think there needs to be clear classification, and where there is no ambiguity left in the minds of the reader or the employee as to when you look at any data, which class it falls under. That's the first and foremost thing in a data policy. The second aspect is you need to ensure that in what circumstances data can be shared, and data stewards are defined. So all critical data, whether you call it critical data or confidential data or restricted data, needs to have stewards in the organization, right? That's another best practice. So it could be data on your transactions, it could be data on your IP. They all data need stewards who will own, who will keep the data integrity, who will ensure that it is current, who will ensure that there is no uh, that the data doesn't get corrupted and the value doesn't deteriorate. So you need data stewards. That's another good practice to have in a data policy. And the last element, which I think it's increasingly getting prominence, is the point around trust, which is how do you ensure that there is trust when you're dealing with data. So now, for example, you may be holding data on your customers, your vendors, your employees, your consumers. So uh, how do you maintain transparency? Now there's legislation that is also planned in India that is going to come our way, but going even beyond legislation to ensure that people whose data you hold see you as a trustworthy steward of their data is something that's also very important, which this policy framework needs to have.
Thank you. That was interesting. Right. What should a business be wary of with digital transformation, and what are the associated risks there?
Right. So digital transformation, I mean, you can approach it in a couple of ways, right? I mean, first of all, again, it starts from your business strategy, right? What is it that you want to gain, and are you doing just digitization, which is adopting digital tools and technologies to automate your processes uh, and your work, or you're taking it to create new business models, new way of going to market. So either way, if it's going to significantly change your organization's way of working, that's really where transformation comes in. And the word transformation is not so much about technology. The word transformation is really about people. So it is about what impact is that change of technology or digital intervention going to cause to your people, your employees, your customers, is the element of transformation that's the most important one. So therefore aspects of training, aspects of upskilling. Sorry. So a lot of transformation, for example, fail because you're not focused enough on employee training. You're not focused on employee change management. So they're used to their old ways of working. They're in their comfort zones. They're not really therefore able to leverage the power of the new digital tech or tools. So transformation really is about people, Sangeeta, and therefore you need a strong program there with your HR partners to address the capability and the change management aspects of technology.
Okay, that is lovely. So what is your take on robotic process automation, and how can a business actually leverage on that? And when should a business consider this robotic process operations? I mean, for its operations.
So, see, robotic process automation is fairly now common in most shared service organizations in the country, right? It takes repeatable tasks and automates it, where you have to deal with multiple systems. And I think the primary value that is being extracted today is from shared service organizations. However, now process automation is also finding its way inside the enterprise. So if there are a whole lot of repetitive actions that employees perform, which can be completely moved away from them and put into these bots. So uh, we need to see what there are certain activities and work that humans are better at doing, and certain activities that is better done by a machine or a bot. And things like regularly repeatable work, like say dealing with data or doing some routine transactions processing within the organization. Even places where some basic decision making is required, but which is rule bound, right? I mean, if it is X, you can do something. If it is beyond a particular limit, you take a different action. If you can codify it, all those are highly amenable to be moved into robotic process automation. Now, this is not to be seen as something that disrupts employment. Rather, it is something that should release capacity of your employees to do higher order work. So you get them to do more analysis, more insights, more creative work. And I think that's what RPA allows you to do. So definitely, it is something that organizations can find great value in deploying.
So does it have to do with the quantum? I mean, like, larger volumes is when you would recommend, or like any business is good to take it up?
That's right, Sangeeta. So that's why this has found a lot of traction with shared services, with banks, with call centers, because there is an element or angle of volume, higher volume transaction processing, like those done by financial institutions and banks and shared service centers, processing centers. They are the first to gain value out of it. But as the technology is evolving, you also now have uh, uh, service models, online cloud models that are available, which allow you to deploy these kind of automations at lower and more, I would say, acceptable cost levels. So definitely, it's also moving into the enterprise. So that shift has started happening. But yes, the first primary beneficiaries are the large shared services and banks and financial institutions, where you have large volume of transactions.
Right. So, how should a business balance its IT costs against financial efficiency?
I see. I don't think it is a or, it's an and. I think you need to spend on your IT, your technology enhancements and your digital work, and you need to do it in a way that you're spending your monies efficiently on the right kind of tools and the right kind of cost levels. And you also need to ensure that these are leading to efficiencies in your organizations, right? And like I said, it's there is always a lag effect of IT. There is you if you invest in year one, you're likely to see the benefit in year two or year three, uh, and therefore it's often not a trade-off. It is and you will need to manage both. The hard reality is that IT costs do sit in your P&L like a overhead. It is an overhead. So you do have to manage your numbers. You have to make your priorities. You have to choose your priorities on where to spend your money, depending on what your P&L allows you. But it is not about it is not IT cost or financial efficiency. It's both. I think it's not possible for you to today say that I'll only do cost and not look at efficiency, or I'll focus only on financial efficiency. It's got to be both.
So now you have like Internet of Things, cloud storage, machine learning. I mean, everything is changing so rapidly. So how can a business actually keep track of all these changes and evaluate what is the good thing, what is the best thing for them, and then leave out whatever is not required.
Right. S- yeah, it can be fairly confusing. I think as you mentioned in the beginning, that the pace of change has really accelerated significantly. It can get quite confusing to a business person to interpret these new technologies, be it big data, be it Internet of Things or cloud or artificial intelligence. There's a whole host of these new technologies that are that are today available. I think again, it is therefore important for business leaders to educate themselves on these technologies. It's no longer technology is now too important just to be left to the IT department, right? I think business leaders need to really understand these tools and how they get incorporated into a business and how it can drive digital transformation. So I would say first and foremost, if your business leaders need to go through a learning curve, through a learning cycle. If and this is also the job of the CIO in the organization, to ensure that the leadership team is as aware and has a strong appreciation of the digital technologies. So that is number one. And once that is there, you can then again go back to the point I was making on business strategy and your business drivers, and then look at what technology will give you the biggest impact. In some cases, it could be efficiency. So, for example, if your primary value that you are seeking is to reduce your cost, you could look at technologies like Internet of Things, etc., to improve your supply chain, etc. But in many cases, it would be both. It would be improving your cost through technologies like IoT, and it would also be about improving consumer experience, consumer value, new business models through technologies like, let's say, augmented realities uh, and all powered by machine learning, AI, etc. So there's a lot one out there that one can do. I think it all starts with business leaders taking ownership for digital. It's no longer about an IT department or the CIO running an agenda. It's about a business. It's a business agenda now, and then one needs to really have it included in your strategy. Your annual strategy sessions need to have digital as a key pillar there, where business leaders need to look at how technology is going to enable or disrupt their businesses.
Business agenda is something very vital, and I love that. It's absolutely right that the business owner has to be involved in it. So then that leaves me with what are the best practices to improve the internal IT processes?
So this is internal IT process is something that's been going on for a long time, right? I mean, at a strategic level, there are two broad approaches. There are companies that completely outsource their IT department and keep it very thin with a few managers, and then give it out to companies like captive centers, shared service centers. Uh, a second approach is also having an internal captive center. So essentially, what you're doing is you're building scale. If you got multiple business units, then you have, instead of outsourcing to an external vendor, you could consolidate all the IT work of your various business units, and you could set up your own captive center. And thirdly, there is also a hybrid approach where a lot of companies do take a hybrid approach, which is they outsource some part and some part they keep internal. There are a lot of considerations when you look at it. It could be, it depends on the size of your company first foremost, because it's essentially, when you talk of efficiencies, it's about scale. The more the scale, the better your efficiency. So the scale is an important one. The second thing is, what's your technology stack? And again, depending on the kind of industry you're in. Suppose you're a high volume, heavy industry, you'll have a very different technology stack than a fast moving consumer good, which is more brand focused, etc. So yeah, I think the essential models are these two, three, and companies would have to choose depending on their size and their industry and technology stack, whether it's complete outsourcing, complete insourcing, or a hybrid. So you can run efficiencies in any one of these models.
Super, super. Thank you so much, Anand. That was like lovely, a lot of insights that you've shared, and I'm sure the viewers are excited. And I will also be, quoting you in the book.